Loss. We have all experienced it at some point in our lives, whether directly or indirectly. At first, the mind cannot accept it. It's overwhelmed by this morbid reality, by the wealth of emotions sweeping over it. We can't accept that they are no longer here, that we'll never speak to them again. Slowly, we begin to accept this truth. We become depressed. Isolation and numbness dominate our lives, but eventually we accept the situation and move on. The game you've been seeing in the background until now is No Response, a walking simulator released in 2018 by Yarn Spinner Games. In this video, we'll be plunging into its world and narrative, in the hopes of influencing our production of 0 Seconds to Midnight, our own walking simulator that forces you to consider the possibility of nuclear holocaust infringing on your life, as you frantically collect items necessary for survival, all the while receiving text from your partner.
Dave, what's going on, man?
The reason I'm calling is this tragic accident over the weekend here in Crown Point. I didn't know either one of the individuals involved, but you know, you hear a story like that, your heart just drops. I believe there's probably, I don't know if they've got kids or whatever the case may be there in their personal lives, but what a horrific story. I checked a couple news outlets, and you kind of hate to look at the aspect of the intersection where that happened. I'm not sure how the cars were situated, what the circumstances were, but it's kind of a tough intersection there. If you're not familiar with the area, there's a little bit of a grade, so somebody spoke down on the side of the road. It's kind of like an elevated intersection, so it could make it tough if there's stranded cars. It's a little narrow, but with any
No Response begins with your journey being interrupted by a fallen tree on the road. You exit your car, flooded by text messages from loved ones, wondering where you are. Your phone was broken in the crash. You have no way of responding, no choice but to move forward and observe as your family worries about you. You see a cabin in the distance, the only sign of life in the area. We then receive a strange text message from an unknown contact. It reads, "Can you hear me?" A standout feature of this game, apart from the calming, melancholy visuals, is the writing conveyed in the text messages. Though simple, this style of writing encapsulates the personal approach we take to texting. These types of texts influence the player to relate the game to their own lives, forming an investment in the story. No Response takes this further in the premise, alone and stranded in the middle of nowhere with no way to respond to your family, a fear perhaps many of us have felt. We receive a text message from our mother that reads, "Where are you? It's getting dark. Hope you're okay, my little angel." You come across a flower pot on the side of the road. Maybe someone has crashed here before, their lives taken. Something already feels wrong. Nevertheless, you move forward. Coming across Owl Lake Nature Trail. Maybe it leads to the cabin. We pass by a campsite to the side of the trail. We receive a text message right as we reach it. "The weather wasn't great, but the trip was a breath of fresh air. Looking forward to next year's expedition, just like old times." We have been here before, as is made evident by this text from our father. But how did he know we were passing by this particular spot? Why are the tents still up and in perfect condition, as if just placed? This raises some questions and initiates growth in no seeds of doubt planted by the flowers on the side of the road. Beyond the campsite is a fork in the road. One leads to a wispy waterfall, and the other onto a dark path leading further into the forest. We'll take the path of the waterfall, a beautiful landmark that we look at from a bridge, surrounded by mist and rising ethereal particles. You may have noticed at this point the aspect ratio of the footage being shown. It's a letterbox aspect ratio, very thin. I didn't edit it to be that way. That is a feature of the game, one that allows it to stand out and to straddle the line between game and film. We are being shown a story as we walk through the world. Though we have little agency apart from choosing our path just before, the writing makes us feel involved. We are enticed by a story that doesn't make itself obvious to us, that allows us to ruminate on it. Moving forward, another memory, a text message from a person called Jack, our brother, perhaps? The river comes to a lake with a get well balloon attached to the branches of a dead tree. remember when we went fishing and you fell in? Dad had to pull you out of the lake? See you soon. The only way forward now is through a tunnel, with incandescent bulbs strewn across its ceiling all the way to the end, leading us through it, beckoning us. The closer we go to the tunnel, the screen is overpowered by static, its colors drained. The unknown contact incessantly begs us not to cross that threshold, to come back. Coming out the other end, dusk progresses to twilight. The sun grows weaker and the environment becomes dark. Now, we receive more messages from our husband. I miss you. I miss us. Remember when we first met? We come across another landmark in the environment. A campfire, littered with beer bottles. Someone had a good time here. Another message from our husband. I fumbled my words when I finally plucked up the courage to speak to you. The reflection of embers from the campfire flooded in your brilliant blue eyes like the butterflies in my stomach. This is where we met our partner, where we formed a connection and our relationship grew into a reliable bond. Each point we've reached thus far has had a personal connection to the narrative and unique aesthetics, allowing the player to form a sense of place to make the world feel genuine. We didn't have much, but we stuck together. When I asked the question, I wasn't sure you'd say yes. I can't believe I forgot to bring the ring. By now, you've realized the truth of our fate. Up until now, we have been in denial of it. Those flowers on the side of the road were for us. The text messages from loved ones reminiscing on warm memories were their way of coping, bargaining with the universe. They weren't just reminding us of good times, they were saying their goodbyes. Our fears are confirmed as we approach the entrance of the cabin. The door wills itself open to reveal a hospital room within. We creep around the medical screens and see our husband, his head in his hand in an empty bed with a phone on the pillow. We realize the truth of why there is no response. But now that you're gone, I feel so lost without you. And that is where this journey of transience from denial to acceptance ends. There's something to be said about the narrative of this game, the way it has minimal exposition and the use of symbolic imagery that influences the player to speculate on the story. Who are the flowers on the side of the road for? Who is the unknown contact? Why is there a phone on the pillow of our deathbed? Is the phone us? Was the husband texting our phone, pretending we're on the other end, ready to reply? I have some thoughts leaving this game, some criticisms first. The gameplay. There is none. The most unique quality of games is their player agency. The player has absolute control over the way they play, the way that the story progresses. Their choices lead to emergent, interesting gameplay and cascading turns in narrative. In No Response, however, the player is given the choice of walking forward, or left or right in the case of that fork in the road. The story is told in a very linear manner, with the player more so experiencing the world, rather than influencing it. In this way, it's more akin to a short film than a game. Otherwise, what can we take away from No Response that can influence the production of our own game, 0 Seconds to Midnight? The text messages are a definite inspiration. Their writing conveys some context while still evoking a particular emotion and enforcing the aesthetic of the game. In its current state, our game's text messages come across a little forced, with the language being too formal, and too calm for the scenario that's taking place. So we'll be taking steps to make the writing feel more frantic and making the character of the partner feel more genuine. Another issue with our game is pacing, which is something that No Response does very well. We'll be looking closely at our text messages to ensure that they match the frantic pace of the game. while still having slow, sentimental moments. In all, No Response is a highly relatable game that leaves you contemplating life and death long after you've completed it. It has also helped us to polish the pillars of our own game, and to further inform our design decisions.